My name is Rob with Garrison Cyclery here in Wilmington, Delaware, and this is my 1983 Rosa. I've been waiting to start this project for some time. Finally found a cool product, an Inny 1-inch threaded to threadless conversion headset. It's a full cartridge bearing sealed headset, but it looks like a traditional headset, as you can tell, up against this old Campagnolo headset. Today I'm going to be showing you all how to disassemble and then install a threadless conversion, which allows me to retain the stock fork. First, we have to remove all the old front end. I've already cracked this loose to make this look very easy. Start by taking the whole top nut off. The keyed washer should slide off nicely like this one is. And then your lower cup should spin off pretty darn smooth. And once this assembly comes out, the whole fork is going to drop out, so make sure you keep your hand underneath the fork. Drop the fork right out the bottom. Bearings come off. You'll most likely have to go into a shop to get a head cup steering race remover. This will drop down in, has to be a 1-inch version. I typically will beat on it with a rubber mallet rather than flaring it with a metal hammer. You'll hear it click once it locks into place. Now grab your metal hammer, strike it from the bottom, hold the top so it doesn't shoot out of the head tube. Comes right out, nice and buttery. The tool out. Spin it in from the other side. Tap it in gently again. Usually put a rag over my hand to protect because I'm driving down now. Same tool, just I reversed the configuration, ran the tool in from the bottom, which will knock the cup out from the bottom. Cup comes right out, nice and easy, no damage, no chipping. We didn't use a screwdriver to get it out of there. The entire headset is now removed from the frame, but we still have to get the crown race off the fork. We don't want to damage any of this. So I'll clean everything down. Another specialty tool that your local bicycle shop will have is a crown race puller. This is a pretty fancy one to ensure that the crown race does not get damaged. I do want to save this old headset. Bring all my dials down because it's an old 1-inch. Start to tighten and it'll extract that crown race. So that removed a crown race without doing any damage to the crown race, and the fork is in perfect condition for an installation of the new crown race. I want to check just a couple tolerances. It needs to be plus or minus 1/10 of a millimeter. We try to keep it right at 30.0, so 29.9 to about 30.1 will get this headset set in this frame properly and have no issues. And we check it the opposite direction. I'm at 30.0, so we're in good shape. So I'm going to take the Inny 1-inch threaded to threadless conversion headset and get that all set up now. To ensure that this is all going to go together properly and tighten down, measure how much protruding steer tube you have out of the top of the head tube. It needs to be between 27 millimeters and 45.5 millimeters. No headset in. Bring the fork all the way up until it touches gently and measure your protrusion. On this one, I measure 42 millimeters. I wring a little bit of grease around the inside of my head tube, upper and lower. Headset press. This drops in from the top. There are no bearings in the lower cup. This is just a naked shell, so nothing gets damaged. Never want to press in on a bearing. The Park reducer cup press fits into a naked cup. This fits right up, and then the lower tool assembly clamps on. Lock it into place and begin your press. So now that the headset press is installed and snugged up, everything is lined up properly. I've got the logo lined up with my head badge. Got to keep everything pretty. I start bringing down the handles, which draw the lower head cup and press it into the frame. Bring it all the way down until it snugs. So that is now all together. I disassemble. I'm going to leave the lower half in. I'm going to take the top assembly out. A couple ways you can do this. You got to be careful that you don't drop this tool on the top tube of your beautiful old bicycle. So once that whole top assembly is out, we get another naked cup. The upper cup has this lip machined into the upper cup. So now this assembly is going to get loaded onto the headset press. The other park adapter gets loaded in. Bring my tool back in. Don't want to go too tight too quick. And then I want to line up that logo again on the front. You know, everything is set in the lower. Everything is tight. The upper is tight and snug. The cup is lined up. And then I'm bringing down the upper assembly, which will drive the headset cup into the frame properly. So this presses down in. You'll feel it come to a stop. This whole upper cup assembly is now pressed into the frame properly. Wipe off a little bit of the grease that helped slide everything in a little more smoothly. So this is all done, and I'm going to remove the tool. Whole tool comes out nice and clean. And we've got a great starting point to load the old fork, fresh cartridge sealed bearings. So last couple key components, your upper and lower bearing, steel cartridge bearings, and your crown race, which this will need to be set properly on the fork. Park gives you a variety of reducers. The black reducers are for 1-inch specific, which is what we're working with, but the reduced 1 1/8 Park fits better. We also want to make sure that our crown race fits on the crown of the fork nice and snug, and we want to be at a measurement of about 26.5 to 26.6 millimeters, and then this will be put into place with the Park crown race setter. That all fits on, locks into place, a couple taps. You'll hear it change tone once it's found its base. There it went. Crown race is on there, flush, tight. We want to do a test fitment with the upper Inny assembly before we go and put everything together. A lot of old school threaded headsets have been over tightened. You want to make sure that you don't have any compromised threads. If you do, it's a 24 TPI. Get a thread file with a 24 TPI, and you can come in and make sure everything is in really tip-top condition. So the threads are in good shape. You can tell nothing is cross-threaded. They're not broken or corroded or rusted. This assembly slides down in, and it should just start turning by hand. This is taking up the threaded steer tube inside the Inny upper threadless assembly, which then in turn allows us to preload the headset. It's a very slick design. We're in the home stretch. Headset upper cup, headset lower cup are all installed. We made sure we didn't damage the lip that is specific to that upper cup. I like a nice heavy duty wheel bearing grease. Grease keeps creaking to a minimum. These are not a press fit bearing, so we want to bed them in a nice generous layer of grease. Notice the bearings are beveled. That's the side that goes into the cup. So your upper bearing is going this way and your lower bearing is coming up this way. Just drops right in. I'm going to pack it with grease as well. And then the lower one, same drill, beveled side up, fits in perfect. Depending on where your stem is going to reside, you can pull the wedge and actual bolt assembly out, and then you'll be able to cut if you want to make a flush mount or not have any protruding, or if you're just going to keep it full length, you don't have to cut it at all. I'm tall and I need as much front end height as I possibly can get. But I'm going to grease all of this assembly and I'm going to grease the wedge before all this goes together. This will really help prevent any creaking and aids in disassembly down the road. Back together. Wedge goes in place. We already have a fair amount of grease in the bearing, but might as well put a little extra down on the threaded portion. And then we know there's no spot for water to sit and cause problems. So you can see we've got our crown race pressed on properly. We've got our lower cup pressed in properly. We've got our upper cup pressed in properly. The bearings are oriented the proper way. So when I load this steer tube and fork into the frame, everything pulls down concentrically, which then allows me to adjust and preload the headset with just turning this. So we're going up in. We know our bearing's in right. That fits in there nicely. There is going to be some excess grease that we're going to need to wipe off. This is an aluminum plug going in a steel steer. So a little extra grease down in there will really help keep grime from getting up in there. And we've already test fitted this, which is nice. That assembly slides right in. And that looks like a ton of stack height, but this will draw this right in. So we'll keep bringing this down. A little bit of grease ooze out. So now that's all in. Everything is together. I bring my preload down. Bring that down. Everything is tight. Headset's adjusted. There's no play. And if you do your prep work and everything is clean and you test fit everything, it should thread together by hand. Once you feel all this is together, you pull this little decorative plug out, which is actually a pretty nice plug. There is a machined in 6mm Allen key, and when I bring this 6mm tight, it's tightening that bolt and expanding the quill, which is the wedge we greased down inside the steer tube of the original fork. So this essentially, I've set the bearing preload and now I'm righty-tightying the top cap, which sets my quill anchor, which makes everything secure and tight and safe to ride. The wedge is a tapered fit, so you really don't need to over tighten it. It would not exceed 15 Newton meters on final torque spec. I tighten my 6mm Allen key, which you can feel the wedge drawing up inside the steer. This is all tight. We're all done. This whole front end assembly is all together. Everything's safe. It really came together nicely. It's a really slick design, very well thought out. Mount a stem on here, mount handlebars, string it with some fresh cables, and it's safe to go ride.